Let's continue our study of the book Great Controversy as it studies the subject of the time of trouble. I'm looking on page 618. Satan had accused Jacob before the angels of God, claiming the right to destroy him because of his sin. He had moved upon Esau to march against him. And during the patriarch's long night of wrestling, Satan endeavored to force upon him a sense of his guilt in order to discourage him and break his hold upon God. Jacob had sinned. He had deceived his brother, he had deceived his father, Isaac, and stolen the birthright that by birth belonged to Esau. Jacob had confessed his sin, but that didn't matter to Satan one bit. Satan endeavored to force upon him a sense of guilt in order to discourage him and break his hold upon God. At the same time, he moved in Esau's experience to march against the patriarch that long night. We continue. Jacob was driven almost to despair, but he knew that without help from heaven, he must perish. Without help from heaven, he must perish. He had sincerely repented of his great sin, and he appealed to the mercy of God. Not because he hadn't made a mistake, not because he had not cold, hard, calculatingly deceived, but he confessed his sin and he appealed to the mercy of God. He would not be turned from his purpose, but held fast the angel and urged his petition with earnest, agonizing cries until he prevailed. Jacob knew he had no other hope than the mercy of God. As Satan influenced Esau to march against Jacob, so he will stir up the wicked to destroy God's people in the time of trouble. Notice the comparison. Just like Satan worked in Esau to get him all worked up, to march on Jacob, in the same way, he will work in the lives of the wicked, that is, the rebellious, so that they will be angry with God's faithful, commandment-keeping people who are relying upon the mercy of God. I want you to remember what happened to Jacob. I want you to remember what Esau didn't accomplish. Esau did not accomplish the death and destruction of Jacob and his company, but Satan moved on him toward that purpose. As he accused Jacob, he will urge his accusations against God's people, the people of God. He numbered the world as his subjects, but the little company who keep the commandments of God are resisting his supremacy. If he could blot them from the earth, he would triumph. His triumph would be complete. If he could just get rid of that small group of people that are obeying God's commandments, then everyone on this world would be his subjects. His triumph would be complete. He sees that holy angels are guarding them. Guarding who? That little company of people who are keeping the commandments of God. He sees that holy angels are guarding them, and he infers that their sins have been pardoned. But he does not know that their cases have been decided in the sanctuary above. He doesn't realize that. He has an accurate knowledge of the sins which he has tempted them to commit. Satan knows what he has tempted us to do. And he presents these before God in the most exaggerated light, representing this people to be just as deserving as himself of exclusion from the favor of God. He declares that the Lord cannot, in justice, forgive their sins and yet destroy him and his angels. Not and be just. He claims them as his prey and demands that they be given into his hands to destroy. You remember what 1 John 1:9 says? It says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins. He is faithful. He is just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He is just because Jesus died in my place. He died in your place. He revealed to us the love of God, and he gave his life to meet the demands of justice. Justice demands that crime have a penalty. It's just not fair to the victims of crime. So justice requires a penalty be paid. And Jesus paid the penalty of sin when he gave his life willingly on the cross. And there is the difference. Satan says, how can you forgive them and take them into your kingdom when I and they both sinned? The difference is if we confess and forsake our sin, he is just to forgive us and cleanse us because he puts his name in place of our name. His righteousness is imputed to us. It is our title to heaven. And then his righteousness is imparted to us, enabling us to live righteous and holy lives. And when we realize we have sinned, we again confess our sin, and he forgives us. And he imparts to us a title to heaven, and then he imputes to us the victory over sin. He will do that for every loyal, commandment-keeping child of God's. But it is the rebellious who want the title to heaven, but they don't want the responsibility of forsaking all sin. So Satan accuses vigorously, but Jesus gave his life for all who will confess their sins. He claims them as his right and demands that they be given into his hands to destroy. Does that make sense to anyone? Satan, who is the head sinner, somehow thinks that he has the right to destroy the rest of the sinners whom he has tempted and led into sin. Does that make any sense to anyone? That is how warped in his thinking the evil devil is. As Satan accuses the people of God on account of their sin, and we have sinned, but as Satan accuses the people of God on account of their sin, the Lord permits him to try them to the uttermost. Their confidence in God, their faith and firmness will be severely tested. As they review the past, their hopes sink. As we think about our past sinfulness, our hopes sink, for in their whole lives they can see little good. They're fully conscious of their weakness and unworthiness. So important. Fully conscious of their weakness and unworthiness. Satan endeavors to terrify them with the thought that their cases are hopeless, that the stain of their defilement will never be washed away. He hopes so to destroy their faith that they will yield to his temptations and turn from their allegiance to God, turn from their loyalty to God. You see, even loyal soldiers in God's army make mistakes. But when they realize it, they confess. When we realize, as loyal followers of God, that we have made mistakes, even premeditated mistakes like Jacob, we are invited to confess our sins. And he will forgive us and cleanse us. And he's just in doing it. Because he is not condoning evil. He is condemning evil and saving us from it. All along, Satan as the adversary is trying to destroy our faith and confidence in God. And so with Jacob, in his time of trouble, he tried to make Jacob lose faith. And that is what the great time of Jacob's trouble is about. Next time we will read that it is not the fear of physical harm. It is the thinking that because of our own weakness and sin, we might have actually messed things up for eternity. Our hope is in Jesus Christ and him only. And out of love for him, we will ask for his Spirit to strengthen us, to give the righteousness of Jesus to us, that we might live righteous and holy lives. But our title to heaven is the righteousness of Jesus Christ. My friend, do not be afraid of the time of Jacob's trouble if you are learning now to trust in God.